My family sold me into marriage. At 15. It's tradition, my father said. The man had 3 broken wives. I ran from my own wedding. The court believed me. Years later, my escape saved hundreds of girls. I found the pamphlet wedged between chemistry textbooks, its bright yellow corner catching afternoon light through the classroom window. Know your rights, protection from forced marriage, screamed across the top in bold letters that made my stomach clench. Mrs. Patterson approached my desk, her voice barely above a whisper. Some students might find that useful. My hands trembled as I opened it. Legal terms jumped out. Protective orders, emergency housing, court advocacy. Words I'd never heard before, describing situations I knew too well. The man your father chose has had 3 wives, my older sister Layla had whispered last week. All left broken. I stuffed the pamphlet deep into my backpack, feeling its weight like a weapon. At home, I waited until everyone slept before reading it by moonlight. Each page revealed possibilities I'd never imagined. Legal shields against family traditions, government protection for girls like me. Marriage next month, Father had announced at dinner. Everything arranged. The pamphlet outlined emergency procedures, courthouse addresses, hotline numbers. I memorized every word, understanding for the first time that American law might protect me from my own blood. My wedding dress hung in the closet like a white shroud. But now I knew something my family didn't. I had rights they couldn't sell away. The next morning, I asked Mrs. Patterson to stay after class. I need help, I whispered, my voice barely steady. She nodded, understanding immediately. We'll figure this out together. Mrs. Patterson handed me her old phone during lunch, showing me the recording app with practiced efficiency. Document everything, she said quietly. Conversations, threats, plans. The court needs proof. I slipped the device into my sleeve, heart hammering as I walked home. Our house buzzed with wedding preparations, caterers calling, relatives arriving, father barking orders about dowry arrangements. She's too young for this responsibility, Aunt Miriam said over tea. 15 is plenty old enough, Father replied. Her husband will teach her what she needs to know. I pressed record, capturing every cruel detail. Uncle Hassan's laugh when discussing my training. Mother's resigned silence when they mentioned the older man's previous wives. First one ran away after 6 months, Hassan chuckled. Second lasted 2 years before the hospital incident. Third one learned to behave. My blood turned to ice, but I kept the device steady. That evening, I recorded Father's phone call with my intended husband, discussing payment schedules and discipline methods. Each word became evidence of their conspiracy. She seems nervous, the man's voice crackled through the speaker. Don't worry, Father assured him. She'll adjust quickly once you establish authority. I saved every recording with timestamps, creating an archive of their plans. Mrs. Patterson had given me more than just a phone. She'd armed me with truth. Late that night, I transcribed the most damaging conversations, preparing documentation that could save my life. The wedding was 5 days away. I woke before dawn to the sound of celebration preparations downstairs. Today was supposed to be my destruction, disguised as joy. The courthouse keycard Mrs. Patterson had arranged lay hidden in my shoe, a small plastic rectangle that meant freedom. She'd coordinated with social services, creating a path to safety I could activate with one swipe. Time to get ready, daughter, Mother called through my door. I dressed in the white gown they'd chosen, playing the obedient bride while my real clothes waited in a backpack under my bed. The keycard pressed against my heel with each step, reminding me that escape was possible. Relatives filled our house, their voices mixing into a chorus of congratulations and blessings. They praised my father's wisdom, my future husband's generosity, my mother's successful daughter-raising. Such a beautiful bride, they cooed, not seeing the terror behind my painted smile. My intended husband arrived at noon, his eyes scanning me like inventory. 43 years old, soft hands that had hurt 3 women before me, a smile that promised suffering. "She'll do nicely," he told Father, as if I weren't standing right there. During the chaos of final preparations, I slipped away to my room. The backpack went out the window first, landing in bushes below. Then I climbed down the oak tree I'd used for childhood adventures, my wedding dress catching on branches. I changed clothes behind our neighbor's shed, abandoning the white gown like a shed skin. The keycard felt warm in my palm as I ran toward the courthouse, toward the protection Mrs. Patterson had promised. Behind me, celebration music played on, unaware that their bride had vanished. Judge Martinez studied the pamphlet Mrs. Patterson had given me months ago, now marked with my desperate annotations and highlighted passages about forced marriage protections. "This document helped you understand your legal rights?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor. I learned that American law protects girls from being sold into marriage." The courtroom felt safer than any place I'd ever known. My family sat in the back row, their faces twisted with rage and shame. Father's lawyer argued about cultural traditions and parental authority, but my evidence spoke louder than his excuses. "I have recordings," I told the judge, my voice growing stronger with each word. The attorney played Father's voice discussing discipline methods with my intended husband. Mother's admission that previous wives had been broken. Uncle Hassan's laughter about the hospital incident. My family's faces turned ashen as their own words condemned them. "The petitioner has provided compelling evidence of imminent harm," Judge Martinez declared. "This court grants the protective order and emergency housing placement." Mrs. Patterson squeezed my shoulder from the witness stand where she'd testified about my academic potential and the bruises she'd documented on my arms. "This young woman showed extraordinary courage in seeking help," she told the court. Father stood abruptly, his voice booming across the courtroom. "She is no daughter of mine, dead to our family." His words should have hurt, but instead they felt like liberation. I was legally free, officially protected, finally safe. The judge's gavel fell with finality. Case closed. I walked out of that courthouse carrying the same pamphlet that had started everything, now stamped with court seals that guaranteed my freedom. The phone Mrs. Patterson had given me buzzed constantly with blocked numbers, my family's desperate attempts to drag me back into their world. "You've destroyed our honor," Mother's voice cracked through voicemail. "Come home and we'll forgive this madness." I deleted each message without listening completely. Their forgiveness meant returning to captivity. My foster placement was a small apartment across town, furnished with donated items and supervised by Sarah, a social worker who understood survival. She helped me enroll in a new school where nobody knew my story. "Freedom isn't free," she said during our first meeting. "You've paid the price up front." The isolation hit harder than I'd expected. No family birthdays, no shared meals, no familiar voices calling my name. I'd traded everything I'd known for everything I'd needed. Some nights, I stared at the device that had recorded my family's cruelty, wondering if the evidence was worth this loneliness. Then I remembered my intended husband's soft hands and predatory smile, and knew I'd made the right choice. Mrs. Patterson visited weekly, bringing homework and hope. "You're not the first girl to walk this path," she said, "and you won't be the last." That's when I understood my real purpose. My escape wasn't just about saving myself. It was about creating a blueprint for others trapped in similar cages. I started researching other cases, learning about girls who'd disappeared into forced marriages, families who'd used culture as an excuse for abuse. My phone became a lifeline instead of a weapon, connecting me with organizations that helped endangered girls. The price of freedom was everything I'd known, but the cost of staying would have been everything I could become. I designed the first envelope during study hall, carefully writing "Know Your Rights" across manila paper that looked like ordinary school supplies. Inside, I placed copies of the pamphlet that had saved me, along with emergency numbers, courthouse addresses, and step-by-step escape instructions. Each envelope became a seed of liberation. Some students might need this information, I told Ms. Rodriguez, the new health teacher who'd agreed to help distribute them. She nodded, understanding the code. Within weeks, envelopes appeared in girls' bathrooms, tucked behind library books, slipped into lockers of students who seemed trapped. My phone buzzed with coded messages from girls across 3 school districts. Aisha, whose engagement party was planned for next month. Carmen, whose family threatened violence if she refused marriage. Zara, who'd found bruises on her cousin's wedding photos. "The network is growing," I reported to Mrs. Patterson during our monthly coffee meetings. She smiled with pride and concern. "You're 17 now. This is dangerous work." "More dangerous than doing nothing," I replied. Each envelope contained carefully researched information, legal precedents, successful escape stories, contact numbers for attorneys who worked pro bono on forced marriage cases. The network operated through coded language and careful timing. Girls learned to recognize allies, document abuse, and navigate legal protections without alerting their families. 3 successful escapes happened that semester. Aisha made it to a women's shelter the night before her engagement. Carmen's protective order was granted after she presented recorded evidence. Zara helped coordinate her cousin's rescue from an abusive marriage. Each victory proved that individual resistance could become collective liberation. We weren't just saving ourselves anymore. We were dismantling a system that treated girls like property. The envelopes multiplied, carrying hope to places where hope had been forbidden. The courthouse steps where I'd first found safety now served as our monthly meeting place. 12 girls gathered in the afternoon sunshine, each carrying envelopes filled with information that could save lives. The Freedom Network has helped 43 girls escape forced marriages this year, I announced to our circle. Aisha, now studying pre-law, raised her hand. "My cousin in Phoenix wants to start a chapter there." Carmen nodded enthusiastically. The women's shelter asked if we could train their counselors on cultural marriage coercion. Each girl represented a victory against traditions that confused control with love. We'd learned to distinguish between honoring culture and surviving abuse, between family loyalty and self-preservation. Mrs. Patterson approached our group, carrying a box of freshly printed pamphlets. "The school district approved our educational program," she announced. "Every high school will have information about forced marriage protections." I remembered finding that first yellow pamphlet between chemistry textbooks, how those words had seemed impossible until they became my reality. Now we were placing that same hope in thousands of hands. My phone buzzed with a message from a girl in Seattle whose family had arranged her summer wedding. Another envelope would go out tomorrow, carrying legal ammunition disguised as school supplies. "We're not victims anymore," I told the group. "We're revolutionaries." The sun set behind the courthouse where Judge Martinez had declared my freedom 3 years ago. That building had become our symbol, a place where justice protected the powerless, where American law stood stronger than ancient cruelties. Our network had grown beyond my wildest dreams, transforming personal trauma into collective liberation. Tomorrow, more envelopes would find their way to desperate hands. More girls would discover their rights, document their abuse, demand their freedom. The revolution continued, one pamphlet at a time. The revolution continued, one pamphlet at a time. 6 months later, I stood before a congressional subcommittee, my hands steady as I held the microphone. Behind me sat 12 young women, survivors who had found their voices through our network. Their faces, no longer hidden in shadow, radiated a quiet strength that filled the chamber. "Honorable members," I began, "what you see before you represents thousands more across this nation. Girls who were told their suffering was tradition, their silence was duty. They have chosen courage instead." The committee chair, a silver-haired woman from Vermont, leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, your organization has documented over 3,000 cases in just 18 months. What do you need from us? I thought of Sarah, now studying pre-law at Georgetown, of Amara, whose testimony had led to her father's arrest, of the countless faces that appeared in my dreams, some saved, others we'd reached too late. We need the Forced Marriage Prevention Act to pass, I said. We need immigration pathways for victims. We need federal funding for safe houses. But most importantly, we need this country to recognize that American girls, citizens born on this soil, are being sold into slavery in their own neighborhoods. The hearing room buzzed with whispers. In the gallery, I spotted Marcus, now my husband of 3 months, his proud smile giving me strength. Beside him sat Dr. Reeves, whose clinic had become a sanctuary for dozens of survivors. After my testimony, a young reporter cornered me in the hallway. Some critics say you're attacking cultural traditions, imposing Western values. There is no cultural tradition in assault, off-screen, I cut her off. There is no heritage in trafficking, acknowledged. What we're fighting isn't culture, it's crime. That evening, back in our expanded office space, I opened my laptop to find 847 new messages. Girls from Utah, Texas, California, New York, each one a story, a plea, a spark of rebellion against chains they'd been taught to accept. Maya knocked on my door, holding a fresh stack of translated pamphlets. These are ready for the Michigan network, she said, and Elena called. The safe house in Phoenix is full, but they're opening a second location. I nodded, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility mixed with hope. Outside, the city hummed with evening traffic, millions of people rushing home to lives they'd chosen freely. Tomorrow would bring new crises, new rescues, new battles in courtrooms and communities. But tonight, 12 young women slept safely, their futures finally their own to write. The revolution was no longer measured in pamphlets alone. It was measured in lives reclaimed,